everyone, and welcome to the 16th episode of Talk Wildlife. I'm going to be interviewing someone you may never have heard of before. Someone who I barely even know. I think his name is Kevin Newell.
Woo!
Yeah, it's our co-host, Kevin Newell.
Hi everyone. I'm afraid today's all about listening to my voice. I'm really sorry in advance.
Yeah, sorry, you might want to tone the volume down a little bit. Listeners or Kevin, really, depending on which one listens and which one doesn't. Anyway, so we're going to be speaking to co-host Kevin Newell. He runs a business, Humane Wildlife Solutions, but I'll let him talk about it a lot more than I will talk about it. But as you know, he is on pretty much every episode with us. And I thought, if I'm going to start interviewing people, and I did my first ever interview on episode 15, which was the last episode, why have I not thought to interview the co-host who has a very, very relevant business of his own, completely to do with wildlife, to do with UK wildlife. It just seems silly not to think of interviewing him. Well, not quite first, but second. Second the best, right?
I'll take that.
Okay, well, we'll just get started then. Hello, Kevin. Give us an introduction to your wildlife business, Humane Wildlife Solutions.
So, hi everyone. Kevin here. This time I'm in the seat which I've been grilled in, not having fun joking about. So Humane Wildlife Solutions is Europe's only vegan, ethical, environmentally friendly, non-lethal alternative to pest control. And yes, that's right. You can work with pests, and I say pests lightly because I just say wildlife, without poisoning them and without killing them. And I've been doing this since 2012, and it's becoming more and more popular, not just for individuals, but also for businesses all over the UK, Europe, and even around the globe.
So what inspired you to start this business?
Well, I got made redundant from a job I really enjoyed, where I was helping people overcome their barriers in getting back into work. And the company got overtook by another company. They wanted to reduce my wage by a massive amount. And to be honest, I was sick and tired of working for other people, giving my best and getting nothing from it. So I was sitting at home one night and I saw a program on TV, I believe it was called Fox Wars. And I was shocked to learn that thousands of urban foxes are killed every year because there wasn't really much of an alternative out there. There were organisations, really fantastic ones, helping just foxes called Foxagon. So hey to the guys at Foxagon, you do amazing work. There's Fox Solutions and also an amazing guy called John Bryan, which I'll talk a little bit more about later on. But watching this programme inspired me to want to make a difference. You know, I've worked with wildlife pretty much my whole life through volunteering opportunities. I read about wildlife. I love to learn about them in every chance I get. And I wanted to offer the people of the UK something that could maybe one day rival the big kill companies. I don't want to drop their names. I don't want to give them any airtime. And I think the dream was initially to have a branch in every county in the UK to give people the option to have non-lethal alternative to wildlife conflicts. And so watching this Fox programme made me realise that if they're killing that many still, thousands of foxes a year, then there needs to be more people to offer more alternative services.
The Fox Project are a great organisation as well, aren't they?
The Fox Project are an amazing organisation. I love them to bits. They always direct people our way when there's fox issues. Not just that, they do incredible work themselves. So every year they take in hundreds of fox cubs and they educate people and they help foxes all round. They are just a fantastic organisation.
Are they not your charity of the year this year?
Yes. One of the things we do every year, with my consultation money that I get, so I do consultations for people, and this can be for people all over the world or even in this country that just need my help there and then on the spot and I can't get out to. And 100% that money goes to my chosen charity of the year. I've done help for Maggie Fleming Animal Hospice. I've done Stop the Cull, the New Ark, and now it is the Fox Project. So I'm proud to give back to these amazing organisations to help more animals and more wildlife as in need.
That's really cool. So, how has the business grown and progressed over the years from day one when you started to now?
Day one, I think everyone thought I was a joke. Telling people that I'm going to do a non-lethal alternative to pest control. I had my friends, I had my family just basically laugh at me and go, that'll never work. But I really truly believed in it, and I still do. It's something I'm really passionate about. And I just kept going, I kept plugging away, and it grew and grew and grew. More people learnt about the business. And I think the thing which started to change people's minds is that I would go and do a job and it will be a really good job and people will be happy with it. These people would then tell other people, and I started to build a reputation. And now this reputation somehow manages to have a global reach. I get a lot of calls from Australia, New Zealand, from America, from Germany, from all over really. And it's grown and grown and grown. There is a huge market of people out there wanting a non-lethal alternative to pest control, because at the end of the day, no one really wants to kill an animal if there's an alternative way of dealing with it. And that's not just individuals in their houses, but it's also businesses. It doesn't look good killing something, and it doesn't feel good killing something.
Yeah, that's something I was going to touch on later on, but basically, would you say that your business is almost a marketing tool for other businesses to say, look at us, look how progressive we are, that even our pest control is ethical?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, an organisation who uses us, they can shout out about it, and a lot of businesses don't want to, because pest control is a very taboo subject. It's one that no one really wants to talk about. There's your contract, go kill those animals and let's not talk about it anymore. But we're offering these organisations a chance to go, look at us, we've taken such an ethical approach that you don't need to kill animals. You don't need to take that approach anymore. And you can shout about it. You can go, yes, our business is an ethical organisation. We have the best alternative to pest control, looking after our stores, protecting their products and their company reputation without any animals being harmed. It's something everyone who I do work for should be shouting about.
So what got you enthused about wildlife in the first place?
I think as a kid, I don't know when it really started, but I have vague memories of, in a weird way, I went to a circus and seen the elephants there, which I can't stand circuses now. But I was like, wow, that's really cool seeing an elephant. And then as a teenager, I was kind of very different to like other boys my age. They were all off chasing girls, and I was off studying the ants in the garden or working at an animal rescue centre down the road, and that's where I spent most of my time. When I was a teenager, I used to have my little nature journal and go in the garden and plot all the different areas where ant nests were, and I used to label them all different labels so I could track them and see what they're doing. And I don't know when it really started, but I definitely have a record. Going back showing where that interest really took off, and I'm so glad I did. And to be honest, I wish I'd started the business when I was much younger, instead of nearly 9 years ago.
So have you always had a soft spot for the animals that you work with?
Oh, totally. Not all of them. It took me a bit of time to warm up to some of them, particularly rats. I used to have a bit of a fear of rats. But the more I learnt about their psychology, their behaviour, their habits, and the way they live their lives in their little social groups, I just had so much love and respect for them. They're just such incredible creatures. To be honest, they're the animal I hate working with the most because they're so intelligent. And I'll be honest, they outsmart me a lot of the times. It's incredible. Every time I have a rat job, I know it's going to be a challenge. It's one that I do enjoy, and when I say I hate it, it's not in a negative way. It's just I know it's going to be a tough day, but I love that challenge, and they always seem to be up for the challenge too without even really knowing it.
So I'm guessing that no two jobs are the same.
No, a question I've been asked many times is, how do you deal with a mouse in a house, or how do you deal with a rat in the loft? There is no set template. Every single job requires me to use my utmost knowledge of the species' behaviour, its psychology, its habits, the little quirks they have, to understand them fully and how they respond to certain stimuli, because I need to use all this then to work against them. And it's not just that, it's also understanding the layout of the building. So every house is pretty much different, every flat's different, every business is pretty much different, so they all represent really big and different challenging circumstances every time I go to a job. I can do 5 rat jobs in a week and not one of them will be the same, and they could all be rats in the garden jobs, but there will always be key differences in each of them that I have to understand, and I have to understand how that environment impacts on the rats and how they live within that environment, and then turn it around against them to make them leave without me having to have too much input.
And as well as physical differences between properties, a lot of it is about human behaviours, isn't it? And how they react to the rats and what they do that maybe attracts them there in the first place. Or mice or foxes, wherever it is you're working with.
Yeah. To be honest, I reckon about 90% of all my jobs is down to the way we as humans use the environment around us. And although we don't see it, you know, the key culprit, for example, of rats in the garden is people either feeding the birds or having a compost heap. Now, you can rat-proof a compost heap. I have a really good YouTube video you can check out about how to do that. But feeding the birds, people love to feed the birds, but they need to understand if you're going to feed birds and there's going to be overspill of food, it probably will attract rats. But don't panic, because rats are a part of the natural ecosystem. They live outside, and as long as you keep them out there from stop them getting in your house, there's no reason to even interfere in their lives. Just make sure they don't get too much food, because the rats will breed to the amount of food source they have. Let's say they get access to a 20 kilogram birdseed bag in the shed, they're going to breed quite a bit because there's a load of food to sustain them. But if there is no food there, then they're not really going to breed. They're not silly. They're not silly. They're not going to keep breeding when there's no food to support a family. So they're really intelligent in that way. So human behaviour impacts pretty much every single job I work on. And it can also be misconceptions as well. People's misconceptions of animals can cause them to call me in a panic and a fear. And there's been many times I've talked to people out of, you know, giving me money basically. And I'm not in this for the money, I'm in it for helping animals. But I've talked myself out of so many jobs just by educating people about, you know, this fox isn't going to eat your baby, or this rat isn't going to bite your neck.
Well, what's your favourite animal to work with, and why is it your favourite animal to work with?
Oh, that's a really tough one.
I thought it would be easy. I thought you'd say foxes, no hesitation.
I love foxes so much. I really do. They're such fantastic creatures. So beautiful, really intelligent. Then, on the other hand, rats are so intelligent. And I think that mental challenge, pitting each other against each other to try and solve it without harming them, that is probably one of my favourite jobs to do. But then, on the flip side, I love working with wasps. Because I understand the wasps so well, you know, I've got to the point now I can remove a wasp nest without any protective gear, without any wasps coming out the nest, without them stinging me. And I've not been stung now, thankfully, for a good 3 or 4 years. And Flo can tell you the story about the time I did get stung 18 times.
Yeah, in someone's loft, and then he phoned me. And I said, "Are you drunk?" And they're like, "No, I'm not drunk." And he'd just been stung so many times it affected him to the point he sounded drunk. So I made him phone A&E or something. And it's just 24.
Yeah,
and they said, "You should be going straight to A&E." But he didn't, and he was fine, luckily, but he should have. So if you ever get stung 18 times, or if you're with someone who's been stung 18 times and they sound drunk, then according to NHS 24 advice, you should take them to A&E. Or at least phone for further advice.
Yeah, if you do get stung by wasps and you're a bit worried or you start reacting weird, yeah, you might want to call NHS 24.
Or just go to A&E.
Yeah, just as a precaution. There's no point taking that risk. I was silly, but I will say it did do me good, because next time I got stung, I barely even reacted to it, so I was quite chuffed.
See, some people do the opposite. I've heard some people get more sensitive to wasp stings.
Yeah, me too. I've been stung a couple of times after that, and it's no more a reaction to getting a bramble thorn stuck in my leg or something.
See, I'm weird. I've never been stung by a bee or a wasp. I'm quite lucky in that respect. I'm sure it'll happen one day, but so far, so good. Are there any common wildlife myths, particularly related to the species that you work with, that you want to dispel? I mean, I know personally there are a lot, but are there any specific ones you want to mention?
I've got 3 that I'll go over really quickly. Firstly, foxes ain't going to eat your babies. There's so many scare stories that you'll see. And to be honest, these scare stories always appear just before the fox hunting season starts. And they're always run by pro-fox hunting newspaper tabloids. So when you see the stories, do question them, because a lot of the times the stories I've seen printed are not true. The second one would be rats will go for your neck. Now, a myth is that rats go for your neck if you corner them and they'll bite you. It's not really true. I can see the psychology for the rat's behaviour behind it. If you're towering over a cornered rat and the only way the rat can see out, so the light source, which is coming over your shoulder because there's probably a light behind you, he will see that as the way out, so he'll do his best to scrabble up you to get out there. So it's not he's going to bite your neck, he just scared, just wants to get away, and that's the only way he can see. So if you do accidentally ever corner a rat, step aside and let them see a clear path away from you, and they'll make their way out. And the last one is Wales disease from rat's urine. Pest controllers will tell you it is super dangerous and it's going to make you ill and you need to kill the rats, otherwise you're going to get super ill. I did a study using stats from the NHS, I can't remember which year it was, either 2013 or 14, and in 1 year, one person was in hospital to Wales disease as a precaution. They weren't ill, just as a precaution. In the same year, 6 people died through vending machines falling on top of them. So if you look at stats like that, you're more likely to be killed by a falling vending machine than you are to be hospitalised by coming into contact with rat's urine.
Here's a question for you, and we discuss it in a few of our other episodes. In fact, it's quite a common thing for us to discuss. And that is, what makes a pest a pest?
What makes a pest a pest? I feel like we've discussed this so much in previous podcasts.
We have, but I feel like this in its own right fits into this episode, and if anyone hasn't listened to the others, it's still relevant.
I'm going to try and sum this up really, really short and sweet. So basically, humans want control over every aspect in their life, whether it's something coming into their garden or into their house. As soon as an animal interferes with our control of our environment, we see them immediately as a pest. So a pest could be literally any animal for any reason. It could be a wood pigeon who's eating grass seeds. It could be a fox who's walking through someone's garden. It could be a cat who's pooing in someone's garden or chasing away the birds. It could be a mouse running across your floor. And all of these boil down to the fact that if humans can't control their environment and an animal's coming into that and doing what they want of their own free will, that we then decide to label them a pest. Basically, every species in the UK could by somebody be seen as a pest because they're doing something that other person doesn't like.
And that's exactly what our perceived pests episodes are about. I think dictionary terms, it's like it's something that steals food or causes disease. I can't remember exactly, but it's not as general, the description, but people use it to mean anything, which is basically what Kevin was saying.
But then if you look at the definition of pests, the one species which ticks all those boxes are humans, because we do all of those plus more.
So you said at the beginning that friends and family didn't really necessarily respect the idea you had for a business or take it seriously. So what sort of other reactions have you gotten when you tell people that you won't kill anything, even in an unpopular species like a wasp or an ant or a flea?
Usually people's first reactions are like, why won't you kill it? I want you to kill it. And I'm like, well, I am a non-lethal organisation, I won't kill them. And they're like, yeah, but they're just wasps. I was like, yeah, really important creatures to our ecosystem. For those who don't know, wasps are a gardener's best friend. They will help keep all the other pests, which gardeners deem as...
He did inverted commas when he said other pests, by the way, for anyone listening.
They'll keep all those other pests down in the garden so your plants do well. But it's weird because I do get a lot of people contacting the company needing our help because we're humane, thinking that we will kill animals, but we won't. And it's quite eye-opening, to be honest, Flo, when people, you see and hear people's reactions. It's like they never ever considered that could be a possibility. And then you open this whole new universe then that you can actually work with wildlife without harming them. So it's an interesting way people react to that.
I think it's funny how some people find it surprising that another person wouldn't want to kill an insect. They're like, wow, that's something you offer. As in, wow, that's something you even care about. Because people often don't really consider insects the same as mammals and birds and reptiles and amphibians, or even maybe they don't consider amphibians and reptiles the same, as you can hear a little bit about in our last episode. Do you think over the years people's opinions towards your business approach has changed? And I don't just mean because your business is better known now that you're getting more jobs out of it, but I mean, do you think the service of humane pest control is more sought after because of general attitudes compared to when you set up 8 years ago?
Yes, totally. People's attitudes to the environment, the wildlife, and how they feel about how they interact with it when there's a conflict is changing. And it's the same for businesses. I get a lot of businesses contacting me now going, we don't want to be seen to be killing animals. We've got a reputation to uphold, but at the same time we need to protect our business. And there is a real big change happening right now. I've even seen it when I'm going through tenders, government tenders for jobs, that pest control's now starting to change to preventative measures. But I will be honest, a lot of the pest control companies whose work I have seen, who are meant to be doing preventative measures, haven't been very good. And I think they do that deliberately to entice more work and encourage more work. But I do believe people now are becoming more conscious of what pest control is and what it does. And now that they have the option and they don't need to have an animal killed, of course they don't want an animal killed. If there's an option where someone doesn't have to die, they're going to want to go for that. And I can see in the business circles and in residential customers circles that it is changing. More people want a better outcome for wildlife conflicts. More people don't want animals dying, and they don't want to pay for animals to die.
So are most of your clients vegans or self-professed wildlife lovers, or are they just so-called ordinary members of the public who decided they'd rather not kill than kill?
The majority, I would say, is probably about 60-40, and the 60 would be animal lovers / vegans, and the 40 would be the, we just want a solution. We're not really vegan. We're not really loving animals, but we need a solution, and we want it done the nicest way possible. I don't know what prompts them to contact us, but I do believe there is a change in people who don't have any invested interest ethically in protecting animals wanting a solution. And I think maybe it's because they see the conventional ways are not working anymore. They're not working, and the market is going to start slowly changing. And I'm happy to be the one leading the way, and I'd be happy to teach other pest control companies how to do the work the way we do it. And I do say other pest control companies because for me to be taken seriously in the market, I had to list the business as a pest control company, because there is no listing for a company of mine. Even when I registered for a vegan trademark, they couldn't categorise the business because there is no category. There is no way you can categorise a non-lethal pest control company. It simply doesn't exist.
It comes under pest control, but I guess because you don't like the word pest, it's not really comfortable to put it in there.
Yeah, it's definitely not comfortable, but I do list the company as a pest control organisation.
I mean, that is what it is.
Yeah.
There's nothing else you could really put it under.
And that's only because that way I get access to those markets, because I do work with wildlife. People do see them as pests, but I don't. I call it wildlife management, and I think that's the better phrase going forward for this.
I've noticed though in some vegan groups, when someone suggests your business, the person with the problem then goes on the page and says, how is this business humane? They're labelled as pest control, so they can't be humane. They view them as pests, and it's, again, the only option you have. You can't label it wildlife management or whatever else you'd want to label it. It has to be under pest control. And talking of the word humane, you hear the word humane a lot these days, and you said yourself that some of the lethal companies that do kill now have either a branch or some tactics they employ or say they employ, which involves proofing or preventative measures or whatever it is that they apparently do, so that they can say to people, oh, we try non-lethal solutions first, or we have a kind of branch of our business which does non-lethal. So what makes your business stand out? Why should someone use you and not a lethal business which says that it also uses non-lethal solutions, which will then turn to lethal ones if they don't work? I worded that really badly, but I'd like to think listeners know what I mean. Basically, why use Kevin's business when you can use a lethal business which says we will completely work non-lethally, but if it doesn't work, then we'll work lethally?
So there was a business, and it may or may not have had a mouse problem, because I never found any evidence of mice being in there. And this organisation was charging a lot of money for this business. They said their ethical approach would involve preventative measures to stop any pests getting into their business. But the thing is, they didn't deploy these. They said they were going to. And when I went around this business, I found over 30 different places of potential entry points that this company should have took care of. And they'd already got bored of even pretending there were going to be preventative measures in place, and they started putting bait boxes everywhere, even ones which are in sealed cupboards, which I don't think the air could even get in, let alone animals. So there's a lot of companies that will say they'll be humane, they're non-lethal, but they will take lethal actions if their other ways don't work. Well, these companies don't do the work we do every week. They actually don't understand it very well, to be quite frank. They are pest control companies who use lethal methods, and no matter how hard they can try and pretend that there's something different, they'll always revert back to those ways. It simply doesn't work. Some of them label themselves as humane pest control companies, and all that simply means is they'll humanely kill an animal. Well, let me tell you this, there is no way you can humanely kill anything. The two words don't work. Humane and killing just don't go together. And this can be, they might live catch, trap a rat in your loft and then humanely hit it over the head, or drowned it in a bucket of water. That's not humane. So what stands me out from other organisations is that when I say we're non-lethal, I say that we're ethical, and I say that we are a vegan approach to wildlife conflicts. We really mean that, and that extends right down to insects, to wasps, to fleas, to ants, to moths, to carpet beetles. All of these have the same respect from myself as a fox or a rabbit or a mole or a rat or a mouse does.
I think as well, because you're doing this because you're passionate about it, not just to get a job done as part of another company, you're always going to try really hard. You've not got anything to fall back on. There's no lethal approach to fall back on. So if you fail, you're going to come up with something new, or you're going to do it again, rather than just say, well, that failed, now I'm going to kill something. You've got the passion behind you, which means you're always going to try your hardest.
Yeah, well, like I always say, when I'm doing a job, my real client is the animal I'm working with, not the person paying me to work with that animal. And that's no disrespect to my clients. It's just that when I'm doing a job, my maximum respect and attention is the welfare of the animal I'm working with. My aim is to help my human client resolve their conflict with wildlife, but at the same time helping my animal client from not being killed.
Are you doing anything as an individual or as a business to combat the sale of poisons and snap traps, etc.?
I am slowly building up what I call my case files of how bad some of these lethal methods are, and I will be using those in the future to do campaigns. We're so busy at the moment, I'm just not getting enough time to get these campaigns up and running. I have taken part in government consultations on the use of things like glue traps, and we've put my expertise over to them to help try and ban the sale of glue traps. The next thing I really want to focus on is banning the public sales of rodenticide. So to everyone else, that is poisons for rats and mice. And the reason for that is because at the moment people can go to supermarkets and buy lethal poisons, which are basically seeds coated in a really bad poison, open a packet and throw it in their garden. Now, the rats and mice are not the only victims here, because birds will eat it. Your cat may even eat it, your chickens may even eat it, and other non-target species eat it and die as well. So I think one of the things I'll be looking at in the future is a campaign to ban the domestic sale to the public of all rodenticides. I think it has to be done because these things don't just kill our wildlife. And this is hedgehogs and voles and shrews, all these non-target species which are illegal to kill anyway, especially with poisons. But these damaged our environment, our waterways, the soil, everything is affected by these terrible products. And it's a shame they're allowed to be sold to the public, in my professional opinion.
Let's imagine now that someone has a problem with slugs or foxes or moles or something else, and they don't necessarily want or need you or anyone to come out and do a job, but they just want a bit of advice about maybe what they can do to help the situation or just be steered in the right direction. Is this something they can contact you about?
Yes, definitely. And I take a lot of inquiries via email or via Facebook or on the phone, and people just want an advice. And 9 times out of 10, if you give people the advice that they need and empower them to deal with a wildlife conflict or just educate them, it can be enough to solve the problem. So it's a really vital part of the service I do. So if you are having a wildlife conflict, you're not sure what to do or where to turn next, just get in contact, because I'll happily talk to people all day long about animals, and be warned, I will bore you with so many wildlife facts, you'll go away being an expert in your field.
I will put Kevin's contact details in the description of this podcast, or should I say specifically his business details. What has been your most unusual or original job? And you can mention a few if you'd like.
Unusual and original. I think there's been a couple. One in America, raccoons in someone's daughter's bedroom. They weren't in the room that night, and the raccoon mum moved their babies in and rested the babies on the blanket shelf in the child's room. That's a really interesting one. Skunks under someone's porch in America again. Wood ants in Sweden. There was baboons in South Africa, was a really interesting case to work on. I actually helped the client in this case build a case to put towards the government in non-lethal ways to work with baboons. That was an interesting one. Or even working at the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow in the Athletes Village with foxes which were there. That was really good, fun job to do.
And the security for that one was probably more strict than airport security, I would say.
Oh yeah, it took about an hour and a half to get through, and then I set the alarms off.
Of course.
Yeah.
I'd say another one that was quite original. I didn't do this one with you, and I won't name the organisation, but I'd say you working with goats in Loch Lomond on a consultation sort of level.
Yes. So there was a goat cull going on, and this was in Scotland, in this part of remote Scotland, and it was being done to protect the plant life in the area, because there was critically endangered plant life there, which was assumed to be being eaten by these goats. But even though the deer were as much to blame as the goats in that case, I wouldn't say blame, they're just doing their own natural foraging. They're feeding naturally like they would. And my recommendations were given, and I didn't hear much back after that. I went out on site and did a full assessment, and it was a really exciting job to do. And it wasn't until a few years later I actually found out that their solution was almost exactly what I suggested to them years earlier. So even though they hadn't taken up my advice at the time, it obviously filtered through that there was a non-lethal way to do it, and they actually did that and stopped the culling of the goats, which is great. I don't need to have the recommendation or the glory or the payment from jobs. I just need to know that people are willing to change the way they behave and think and see animals in a different light. And if I'm educating people along the way by doing this, then fantastic. It's to me, that's a massive success.
So I heard you say before, and you also touched very briefly on this earlier on, that sometimes you talk yourself out of jobs to benefit the wildlife. So what exactly do you mean by this, and what exactly does that mean?
The most common example of this I would use, and it happens every year, numerous times, is I'll get a phone call and someone will say, I've got foxes in the garden, I'm terrified, they're going to attack the children or attack the grandchildren, what do I do? And I'll spend maybe 30 minutes or so talking them over how foxes behave and everything about foxes. This is where I go into my geek mode, and I'll just lay down all the facts, and I'll put fun facts in there, interesting facts, And I basically break down their fears and replace their fears with nice things to know about the animal. So I re-educate them to the point that they no longer want the foxes to be gone from the garden because they now know they don't represent a danger. And then I always try and throw in at the end, you should get your grandchildren around or get your children involved, and you can all sit there in the evening and watch these foxes, because what a fantastic opportunity to watch a little fox family grow in your very own garden. And what a great opportunity to teach your children how to respect wildlife, which is in your garden. I mean, if I always say to them, if I had them on my garden, I'd be thrilled. I don't, never have, which is quite sad. But I always try and just break down their fears and then educate them about the species they're having with. And as soon as those fears are gone, the people are like, cool, yeah, I'm happy for them to stay. And I'll get the neighbours over too, we can all watch it. And it's really nice. That to me is the best form of success. Not only have those foxes been safeguarded, the people who have in their garden have gone from fear to enjoyment. And it's, to me, that's the best feeling ever.
You haven't had foxes live in your garden, but do you remember a few households ago, we had a couple of foxes together just outside our front door? And you also used to have a badger which ate all your vegetables.
Yeah, dude, the two foxes were really cute. It was roughly around about the time they were pairing up anyway to breed. And I don't know why we put a trail cam outside our front door.
I think we saw a fox once, so we put the trail cam out in case we saw another.
Yeah.
We captured both. It was really nice. They were walking together.
It was really cute.
So there's only one more question. You have a cat service. Tell us about your cat service. Wait, it's not technically a question, that's an instruction. So, can you tell us about your cat service?
I can. So the cat service, do you want me to tell you why this service came about in the first place?
Yeah, tell me everything about it.
So back in my hometown in Essex, there was a spate of cat killings going on one street. And I grew up in this area, spent a lot of time there as a kid, and I wanted to get involved. The local community has set up a Facebook page, and this involved so many different households. 20 cats have been poisoned, even more had gone missing. So I asked them if they could tell me all the details about their cats. So people were telling me, you know, their cats, where their cat went up. Did the cat go out the front door or the back door? Where they knew their cat went? Was their cat a male or female? Were they neutered? If it was a tomcat, he would have strayed a long distance. If it was a neutered female, she wouldn't have gone too far. And I used all this psychology and behaviour, my knowledge of cats, and where they lived on the street and where they were found poisoned, to actually help the local police force identify the houses or the house of 3 where I believe this cat killer was residing. And it boiled down to this man had had enough of cats chasing birds out of his garden and fouling in his garden, and he had no service to turn to. There was no one he could turn to for help. So he'd got to the point where he was putting, I won't say what down, he's putting something down to kill the cats, and he killed a lot, and I think it got out of hand for him. Sadly, when the police did raid him, they knew it was him, they didn't have enough evidence to prosecute him, but it did stop. And that made me realise that for those people in the situations where they've had enough of cats fouling in the garden or chasing away the birds, I needed to make a service. And I should shout about it more, but I don't. I don't really market the business much. I generate lots of viral leads. They come in on their own accord, but you know, maybe one day I will publish the services more and market it more. But I did do this service, and I have had it running for a long time, and I've had 100% success rate on it. So I had one client who said, I've got cats in my garden, they're fouling every night. If you don't do something about it, I'm going to shoot them. So I went out and I surveyed it, and I said, look, you don't have cats, do you? And the guy was like, no. I was like, well, you've basically got a turf war going on in your garden from all the neighbouring cats.
It'd be sort of boring if he did have a cat, because he wants to shoot other people's cats, but he has one himself. Which obviously he didn't, but it would be quite disturbing if he had his own cat.
I wouldn't put it past some
obviously
people.
Not a cat lover.
Yeah, exactly. So looking at this client's garden, I identified that in his garden was a cat turf war going on. Cats from all the neighbouring gardens and all the households around him had cats were coming into his garden, and one was fouling, and then the other one was fouling, and then the other one was fouling, all trying to claim the territory. And cats will share spaces. They do it staggered in time. I don't know how they do it, but there was a study on a TV programme which looked into cats and how they time shared spaces. But when they time shared these spaces, because they timeshare so they don't have conflicts and fights, but they timeshare and then they all scent mark and foul around the garden, and this builds up. So with this job, I instructed the guy what to do. I went out, I showed him how to neutralise his garden from cats. He did what I said. Within a week, he had no cats fouling his garden, and we think he probably had up to 10 plus cats fouling at any one time. So, it proved it worked, and it saved cats from getting shot.
Sorry, I just say 10 cats fouling at any one time. I just picture him looking out the window and there's like 10 cats in a line just looking at him or like pooing on his lawn.
If you'd have seen how much cat mess I picked up in his garden, I wouldn't have put it past it. The line of cats
They
going.
sit in a circle or a line or a triangle.
Well, I imagine they were sitting in a nice distanced line, so they went getting
Socially distanced. That's a very big garden. 2
socially
meters,
distanced
10
line.
cats.
But all giving their little paws up to the guy looking out the window going, yeah, we're doing that again, mate. What are you going to do?
Oh, I hope not.
I think some cats probably would. They'd be like, yeah, whatever, human.
Yeah, but because of your cat solution service, because of your cat service which offered a solution, it shouldn't be happening. And it's a long-term thing. It's about behaviour, and it can be a long-term solution, can't it?
Oh, yeah, it certainly is a long-term solution, but it's key. You have to view it through a cat's eyes. So don't view it as a human garden, view it as a cat territory, a cat turf war. And these cats are putting these scent markers everywhere because they're trying to claim the territory, and the other cat's doing it, and the other cat's doing it. So you have to take that away. And the way to take it away is removing the scent, removing that attraction to make it, removing the attraction of trying to claim that territory, neutralising it, and no one wants it.
Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to say before you go off this podcast forever and we maybe have you again, like sometime in the future?
Yeah, follow us on our social media. So that's on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook.
I'll put all these in the description of the video.
Or even on our LinkedIn page. If you're a professional yourself, you want to get in contact, go for our LinkedIn page. And you'll find it under me, Kevin Newell, on there, not under Humane Wildlife Solutions. But one of the things, we don't just go out to premises and people's homes to help with wildlife problems. We do a lot of research into new ways of working with wildlife, always involving plant-based products and techniques, and a non-lethal way of overcoming new wildlife conflicts. If you've got a conflict and you think he's not mad enough to even consider this, try me. I bet I am. I will always try and find a solution.
Actually, that's a good point. Do you want to talk about the research which you nearly got sponsorship? Okay, I've said this sentence about 5 times now and then deleted it and resaid it. Sponsorship. Do you want to talk about the research which you nearly got sponsorship for, but then didn't? And you can explain why. And because I've said this 5 times, I know that he does want to do that, so I'm just gonna let him. I'm just gonna be quiet now. You can take over the show. You can
I'll leave it there.
Forget co-host. You can just be the co-host.
I'll leave it there. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. No, I'm just joking. After 5 attempts, I at least owe her a story. Definitely getting a death stare. So I have been and still am developing a completely plant-based wasp nest repellent, and I've had really good success with it. So I took this idea and I put it out to some business support organisations, and they put me in touch with a big plant-based research company. When I say plant-based, they focus on plants. They're not a vegan company. And I pitched my idea to them on what I've been working on and told them about the results. I don't want to give too much away because this is still research in progress. And they were so excited. They got the Europeans director over to come and listen to my pitch, and they told me that they thought I was going to make a lot of money from this, millions. I could make millions, and they were going to offer millions also in funding to take this product to the market. However, the only thing they wanted, and they made clear, is there would need to be animal testing involved. Now, I don't care how many millions someone offers me and that I would make millions, I will never sell out my values, and that includes taken part in any form of animal testing. So sadly, actually, you know what? Not sadly, I proudly declined their offer of millions of funding for this project because I was not going to sell out my values, and that's what I stand by. My business is built on my vegan values, and I'm never going to change that. I'll never kill an animal for anyone, for no matter how much money you offer, and that includes for our research too. So I had to turn them down. But I'm still developing this idea, and one day hopefully I can bring the world a completely plant-based wasp nest repellent which won't harm wasps.
And it just shows how genuine Kevin's business model is, that he really won't kill anything, even if it makes him millions and even if it helps wasps in the future, because he's going to try and do it another way, not involving animals in the process.
Exactly. And just the last thing to add to the business, I do a lot of educational talks. It can be a talk to a group of people over a Zoom. When we get out of the COVID crisis, it can be back to going to festivals, going to businesses. I'll talk to anyone about this way of working with wildlife, because let's face it, our wildlife is being decimated. It's in need of our help so much right now. And I didn't even realise at the time, but my business is playing a big part in that, because if everyone changed the way they dealt with wildlife conflicts, it would save a lot more lives, a lot more wild lives in our country.
Okay, well, thank you so much. You've been really good. It's almost like you've been co-hosting a podcast before.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna have to look at those offers again for doing other podcasts.
No, you're not, mate. No. If
You're-
you leave Talk Wildlife to go on another one, I mean, fine if you want to do more than one, but you can't leave this one.
I wouldn't. I love this
That
podcast.
would be so rude. I'd be on my own and I can't really talk to myself. It wouldn't be quite the same.
Brooke and Bran always contribute.
Have they contributed tonight? No.
No, because Bran was being too noisy.
Yeah, I said Bran could stay, but he was being extremely noisy to the point that probably every 10 seconds we would have said, okay, Bran, or thanks, Bran, and then had to start again. So we put him in the kitchen. But it's fine because he gets his food there, so he's perfectly happy. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I would say that we're going to try and have the next episode very soon, but it's so hard to be consistent. I want to get episodes out every week, I really, really do, but when I'm focusing on other things, I have to prioritise them because sometimes they have deadlines. In fact, last night I did have a deadline. It was a very, very tight deadline, and the thing before that, in fact, as well, or a couple of videos before that, actually. But I really do enjoy doing the podcast. It's not due to lack of interest that it's been a while since we've done them. So yeah, I thought this would be a good one to do. I wanted to do it anyway, and then when it was taking me so long to get the next episode organised, I thought even better, because this one doesn't take too much preparation. I just made up some questions and Kevin obviously knows the answer to them, so it was a good one to start back on. And I'm hoping that we'll do more interviews in the future. Maybe a fifth of our episodes could be interviews, but to be honest, I don't mind. Maybe 10%, 5%, it wouldn't bother me. I just love doing the episodes. So thank you very much for listening. Have a great day, week, month, life, and hopefully you'll hear from us very soon.
Bye.
Bye.